Hi everybody, it's starting to snow. You know what that means. Snowball fight incoming. Welcome to Fiddlesticks and Stitches. I'm Fiddle. Today's project is this entryway door stand, including the plant, papers, and candle. Don't forget, link to scavenger hunt and printables in the description box below. Let's get started. The first thing we need to do is print and cut out our pattern. I cut out the structural pieces for the stand first and saved the door bits for later. Then I moved on to cutting them out of wood. The first two pieces we're going to be gluing together are the top two pieces that I didn't realize I didn't label until now. But we're going to be gluing the two long edges together. This is going to be the base and the back of our little end stand. Then we'll need our first cardboard piece, and that is the curved front portion. I figured it'd be a heck of a lot easier to just make that out of cardboard. Also, the other curved wood piece. I would suggest before gluing this piece down that you draw out your guideline of where you want it to sit, because you'll only be able to glue a section at a time, and that line can get a little askew as you go because it's weaker where the drawer hole is than it is at the ends, and that'll cause it to curve more at that center point. So having your guidelines there would really help with that. Not to mention, I used the super glue because it does dry faster, so that way I didn't have to worry about the wood glue slipping. While you're gluing, be mindful of your drawer opening because you want that to stay centered, and you want the excess over at the ends so you can cut it off after you're done gluing it all the way around. Now we can glue the two halves together, and I went back to using wood glue for this now that the cardboard piece is fixed. Set it aside to dry, and we're going to move on to our next pieces, which is the top of the stand and the one labeled times 4, which is also supposed to be labeled dividers. After cutting the dividers out, I held them all together with a clamp and then sanded them at the same time to make sure they were all the same size. Then I glued the outside ends first, but I would suggest now to do it consecutively, one after another, starting at one end. It would have made the next few steps so much easier on myself. My line of thinking was I wanted to make sure and get the top on first to hold the shelves up while I glued them in place. Then I glued the top on, but honestly you can wait until after the next step to do that if you would like. We'll be adding the dividers next, and we'll need the cardboard pieces for the upper drawers. They will be used as a guide to make sure we're putting the divider wall in the right place. You'll want it to meet up just with the outside edge of your piece of cardboard. Once you have it set, go ahead and glue it down with some tacky glue. Next, glue on your cardboard pieces for the little drawers. Set it aside and let it dry. Now we can move on to the drawers themselves, and we're going to start with the base of the big one and the one labeled back of the drawer. Then I moved on from there, gluing each side of the drawer around until I got to the face of the drawer where it is just a tidbit different. One, I drew a guideline so that way I could see where I needed to put this. It is a bit bigger than the drawer itself, so that way it can't be pushed inwards. I drew a line so I can make sure I have it centered on both pieces. And when I went to glue it down, I went out of frame. Sorry about that. But you want to make sure that it is centered all the way around while gluing it down. And we're going to move on to the little drawers, following the same steps as before. Set the drawers aside to dry and then give everything a good sanding. To determine how long I wanted the legs of my stand to be, I used my doll as a guide. Cut them to size and then glued the back two on, and from there you can decide if you want a four-legged stand or a three-legged stand. I chose 3 legs. And next we're going to move on to painting. You can do whatever color you want, but I went black for my drawers and brown for the body of the dresser. To make the handles for the drawers, I took two wood beads, one oblong and one round seed bead, cut them in half lengthwise, then painted them black and silver. I used the round one for each of the tiny drawers and the oblong one for each end of the long drawer. And with that, it finishes up our stand, and we can move on to our papers that are scattered about the desk. I used three different colors for this: a cream, tan, and a brown. I went back and forth between the colors on the different pieces of paper to give it some variation. When I was happy with how they looked, I went ahead and cut them out. After cutting them out, I had to decide how I wanted them to be displayed. Some of them I rolled around a dowel to make them scrolls. Others I just folded in thirds like a regular letter. I went back and forth with myself about adding the newspaper. In the end, I did not, however, I do still have it, so I may use it some other time. But at this point, I hadn't decided exactly what else I wanted to do with it, other than the red bead with the feather quilt in it and the candle for sure. But then I looked over and I seen one of the little string plant holders that I had made a while ago that I've just had sitting in a box, and I decided that I wanted to make a plant for it. And I figured if I went and made a plant for it in this pot, you would need to see how the pot was made as well. So that's what we're going to start with now. Using our little cone that's come in handy for so many different things, we are going to lather glue on it, then starting at one end, wrap it all the way around until you reach the other. Glue your bead on the bottom and set it aside to dry. We're going to work on the leaves now, and we're going to need our wire, tape, and leaf pattern. If you want to avoid little traps all over your table, you can go ahead and tape them together and cut them out one at a time. What we're doing is taking the pattern that we cut out and sticking it on a piece of tape, but we're putting the wire in between. If you want to secure it later on with some super glue or something like that, or even wrap your wire with string, that would look even better. I kept my wire plain. The traps got the wire. You're going to make your wire stems about an inch to an inch and a half long for the longer pieces, and then gradually get smaller. A good variation isn't a bad thing either. After getting all the stems made, I moved on to coloring them. I used three different variations of green, the darkest for the veins, middle for the shadows, and the lighter for the areas the light would really touch. Once they were all colored, I used super glue and baking soda to glue them into the flower pot. I decided how I wanted to arrange them as I was gluing. Now our plant's done. The next thing we're going to be working on is the candles, and this one comes with a recommendation. If you have an old printer laying around, take it apart. There are some pretty interesting things in there. I made an eye hook at one end, straightened it out just a bit, and then curved it down in to where it would fit in one of the holes of the bean. And this is that way there's something more for glue to bite onto. I used my wire cutters to trim off the bottom so that way it was flush. Once I had it set in place, I used super glue and baking soda. Be mindful of your fingers. If there's any in a place that you really don't want it, you can sand it off in the end. But I left a lot of the bits that were sticking out from the glue there because it looks like candle wax. For the next part, you would need a printer rolling rod. Size and shape varies from printer to printer. Some of them even have different kinds all in one. I gave a few different examples in the photo. I used an easy cutter to angle the end of some of them so it looks like some are burnt. If your printer roller has a hole through the center of it, even better, because then it looks like the wax has melted down in towards the wick, making it look more realistic. The ones that I used for this one did not have that. I would imagine that if you wanted to, you could actually leave the hole open and put a little battery operated light in there. Future thoughts. Then my camera went glowy white and I was kind of off screen. What I'm doing here is taking the glue, and because it's a gel super glue, it holds its shape, making a raised area off the surface. And as long as you don't dunk the candle into it, you can actually retain that shape by sprinkling the baking soda onto the candle. I added drips down the side and pools at the bottom. Although it looks really good, one thing that I noticed is the difference between the roller and the glue. My solution was to paint the candle white, the base black, and then go over the white with a brown wash. And with that, it brings us to the end of our tutorial. I hope you enjoyed, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because it really helps me out a lot. See you next time.